October 24th, 1944. 0847 hours. The waters east of Leyte Gulf, Philippines, through the periscope of submarine I-56. Commander Terahisa Komatsu witnessed something that would shatter the carefully constructed illusions of the Imperial Japanese Navy's high command. Stretching across the horizon, from north to south as far as his optics could resolve, sailed what appeared to be an impossible armada. He counted 30 vessels before losing track. Then 50. Then he stopped counting altogether. Send immediate flash transmission to Combined Fleet Headquarters, Komatsu ordered, his voice barely steady. Enemy fleet sighted. Size, unprecedented. Admiral Kurita must be informed immediately. The radio operator hesitated. Sir, what numbers should I report? Komatsu stared through the periscope again, watching the endless procession of gray hulls cutting through the Pacific swell. Tell them we have awakened a sleeping dragon, and we are about to discover what it means when America brings its full industrial might to war. What Japanese naval commanders were about to learn would fundamentally transform their understanding of what modern industrial warfare actually meant and how catastrophically they had miscalculated their enemies' capabilities. The message from I-56 reached Admiral Takeo Kurita's flagship, the heavy cruiser Itago, at 0912 hours on October 24th, 1944. Kurita, commanding the center force of the Imperial Japanese Navy's Show 1 operation, read the decoded transmission 3 times before summoning his chief of staff, Rear Admiral Tamiji Koyanagi. This cannot be accurate, Kurita stated, sliding the message across the chart table. Komatsu reports observing more than 100 American vessels in a single formation. Our intelligence estimates place total American strength in the Philippines at 40 capital ships maximum. Koyanagi studied the message, his expression darkening. Perhaps the submarine commander has counted escort vessels, sir. Destroyers, destroyer escorts. He specifically identifies 6 fleet carriers. 6, Koyanagi. We sank 4 American fleet carriers at the Philippine Sea engagement 3 months ago. How can they field 6 carriers now, plus battleships, cruisers, and supporting vessels numbering in the dozens? The answer, had Kurita known it, lay in American shipyards that Japanese naval intelligence had fundamentally failed to comprehend. While Japan's naval construction had effectively ceased after 1942 due to material shortages, American shipyards had accelerated production to levels that seemed to defy economic logic. At 1,145 hours. Kurita received confirmation from 3 additional submarines. Each reported massive American fleet concentrations. I-45 counted 18 carriers, a number Kurita initially dismissed as impossible. I-58 reported battleship formations numbering 12 vessels. I-54 transmitted simply, American fleet strength exceeds all previous estimates by factor of 3 or more. In the underground command center beneath Tokyo's Navy Ministry, Admiral Somu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, convened an emergency conference at 1,400 hours. Present were Vice Admiral Shigeru Fukudome, Chief of Staff, and Rear Admiral Sokichi Takagi, the Navy's senior operations analyst. Gentlemen, Toyota began, spreading reconnaissance reports across the table. We are receiving information that contradicts every intelligence assessment we have made since 1942. Either our submarine commanders have simultaneously lost their ability to count, or we have been fundamentally wrong about American naval construction capabilities. Takagi, who had spent 18 months analyzing American industrial output, spoke carefully. Admiral, I have been warning since 1943 that our intelligence estimates were dangerously optimistic. American shipyards are operating on a scale we have no frame of reference for. They are not building ships the way we build ships. They are manufacturing them like automobiles. Mass production on assembly lines we cannot match. Fukudome interrupted. The Americans lost 4 carriers at Philippine Sea. We confirmed those sinkings, and they have already replaced them, Takagi stated flatly. Essex-class carriers are being commissioned at a rate of 1 per month. Independence-class light carriers even faster. While we struggle to repair damage to Shokaku and Zuikaku, the Americans are launching new carriers every 30 days. Toyota stood silent for a long moment, staring at the intelligence summaries. The numbers told a story that Japanese naval doctrine had no answer for. In December 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy had possessed 10 carriers. The United States Navy had 7. By October 1944, Japan had 4 operational carriers remaining. 2 of those, Zuikaku and Zuho, were so critically short of trained pilots that they functioned primarily as decoys rather than combat vessels. The Americans, according to the latest submarine reports, were operating more than 30 carriers of various classes in the Pacific theater alone. Additionally, they maintained a complete Atlantic fleet that exceeded the entire Japanese naval order of battle. How? Toyota asked quietly. How did we miscalculate so badly? Takagi pulled out a folder he had compiled over months of analysis. Admiral, American industrial production in 1943 exceeded our total production for the entire war to date. In 1944, they surpassed that again. They are building Liberty ships, cargo vessels, faster than we can sink them. 1 every 4 days from a single shipyard complex. They have dozens of such complexes. He spread photographs obtained through neutral sources, images of American shipyards taken from international maritime publications. Bethlehem Steel's Four River Shipyard in Massachusetts. Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia. Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California. Each photograph showed multiple capital ships under simultaneous construction. We built Yamato over 4 years with the combined resources of our finest shipyard, Takagi continued. The Americans built USS New Jersey in 18 months and launched 5 sister ships in the same period, while we concentrated our industrial capacity on 2 super battleships. They mass-produced 24 modern battleships, plus dozens of carriers, hundreds of destroyers, and thousands of supporting vessels. Fukudome's face had gone pale. Then the show, one operation, is sailing into a numerical disadvantage we cannot overcome through tactical brilliance or warrior spirit, Takagi finished. Admiral Kurita will face not 40 American ships, but potentially more than 200. Every intelligence estimate we based this operation on was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Toyota sat down heavily, the weight of realization evident in his posture. Then we have already lost this war. We lost at the moment we failed to understand what American industrial capacity truly meant. Outside the conference room, staff officers continued planning operations based on intelligence estimates that were about to collide with a reality that would shatter the Imperial Japanese Navy forever. October 25, 1944, 0630 hours. Admiral Kurita's center force entered the Sibuyan Sea, committed now to penetrating through the Philippine Islands to reach the American landing. Forces at Leyte Gulf. What happened over the next 8 hours would provide Japanese commanders with a devastating education in American naval aviation capabilities. The AT-0810 hours. Radar operators aboard Kurita's flagship detected the first incoming aircraft formations. The initial count was 48 planes, a standard carrier strike package that Japanese forces had encountered dozens of times before. All ships, air defense stations, Kurita ordered. Fighter Combat Air Patrol, intercept bearing 090. But something was different this time. The radar screens showed the incoming formation, but behind them, at regular intervals, appeared additional contacts. Then more. And more. Lieutenant Commander Otani Tanasuke, the Fleet Air Defense Coordinator, stared at his radar display in growing disbelief. Sir, I'm tracking multiple formations, 5 separate strike groups, each numbering 40 to 50 aircraft. That's impossible, Rear Admiral Koyanagi responded. No carrier task force can launch that many planes simultaneously. They would need multiple carrier groups. Otani finished quietly. Sir, we're not facing one American carrier task force. We're facing several. The first strike arrived at 0827 hours. TBF Avenger torpedo bombers came in low across the water, while SB-2C Helldiver dive bombers attacked from altitude. F-6F Hellcat fighters strafed anti-aircraft positions. The coordination was flawless, the execution professional, the volume overwhelming. Battleship Musashi, sister ship to the legendary Yamato and considered unsinkable by Japanese naval architects, took her first bomb hit at 0835 hours. Then a torpedo struck her port side. Then another bomb. Then 3 more torpedoes in rapid succession. Kurita watched from Atago's bridge as Musashi's anti-aircraft batteries blazed continuously, downing multiple American planes. But for every plane shot down, 5 more pressed their attacks. The sheer volume of attacking aircraft exceeded anything Japanese forces had previously encountered. Second wave incoming. Otani reported at 0945 hours. Radar shows 50-plus contacts, bearing 115. Before that strike arrived, a third wave appeared on radar. Then a fourth. American carrier aircraft were arriving in continuous relays, giving Japanese ships no respite, no opportunity to conduct damage control effectively, no chance to regroup. Aboard heavy cruiser Maya, Captain Ranji Oe recorded in his log, "We are being attacked by what appears to be an endless supply of enemy aircraft. Our anti-aircraft ammunition is depleting faster than it can be resupplied from magazines. If this continues, we will be defenseless not from lack of guns, but from lack of shells." The mathematics that Japanese commanders had relied upon for 3 years of war were failing catastrophically. Japanese carrier doctrine, based on their own capabilities, assumed that carrier aircraft could launch perhaps 2 major strikes per day before requiring extensive maintenance, rearming, and pilot rest. The Americans, it was becoming clear, operated under different rules entirely. Their carriers were launching continuous strikes, rotating fresh squadrons, maintaining constant pressure. Japanese calculations had assumed rough parity in sortie rates. They had been wronged at AT 1,134 hours. Musashi took her 19th torpedo hit. The massive battleship, displacing 73,000 tons fully loaded and protected by armor belts 16 inches thick, was visibly listing. Her speed had dropped from 27 knots to less than 12. "How many carriers are attacking us?" Kurita demanded, his voice tight with frustration. Communications officer Lieutenant Shimada consulted the intelligence summaries. "Fleet radio intercepts suggest strike aircraft from at least 12 different carriers, sir. Task groups 38.2, 38.3, and 38.4. Our intelligence estimated 3 to 4 carriers per task group." 12 carriers, Koyanagi repeated slowly. "Coordinating simultaneous strikes. That's more carriers than we have possessed for the entire war combined." At 1,315 hours, Kurita made a decision that would be debated by naval historians for decades. He ordered Center Force to temporarily reverse course, retreating westward away from the American carrier aircraft that were systematically destroying his fleet. The after-action report he transmitted to Admiral Toyota in Tokyo stated simply, "Enemy air power vastly exceeds all intelligence estimates. Sustained attacks from dawn to present. Own forces have expended 70% of anti-aircraft ammunition. Musashi heavily damaged and sinking. Heavy cruiser Myoko crippled. Without fighter cover, penetration to Leyte Gulf will result in destruction of entire force." In Tokyo, Admiral Toyota read Kurita's report at 1,530 hours. He summoned Rear Admiral Takagi once again. "Your assessment?" Toyota asked. Takagi had spent the morning compiling reports from all Japanese forces in contact with American naval power. The picture they painted was consistent and terrifying. "Admiral, we are receiving similar reports from every theater. American carrier strength appears to exceed 100 aircraft per vessel versus our 50. Their ability to conduct sustained operations exceeds ours by factors we cannot match. Most critically, they possess the ships, planes, pilots, fuel, and munitions to conduct these operations simultaneously across thousands of miles of ocean." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Sir, we calculated that American industrial production was perhaps double or triple our own. We were wrong. It's not double or triple. It's 10 times our capacity. Perhaps more. They're not just outproducing us. They're operating on a scale that makes our entire war effort seem insignificant." Toyota stood at the window overlooking Tokyo, watching the city that had already endured multiple bombing raids. Then Admiral Yamamoto was correct. "We did awaken a sleeping giant, and we are only now discovering what that truly means." By nightfall on October 25th, battleship Musashi had capsized and sunk, taking 1,023 officers and men with her. The vessel that represented the pinnacle of Japanese naval architecture, more heavily armed and armored than any ship afloat. had been destroyed by American carrier aviation through sheer overwhelming force. Japanese commanders were learning a terrible lesson. In industrial warfare, quality cannot overcome quantity when the quantitative advantage becomes sufficiently large. And America's advantage wasn't just large, it was insurmountable. October 27, 1944. The Battle of Leyte Gulf had concluded with the virtual destruction of the Imperial Japanese Navy as an offensive force. But the true devastation was not merely in ships sunk or sailors lost. It was in the complete shattering of Japanese naval officers' belief in their ability to influence the war's outcome. At 1,100 hours. Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, commander of the 1st Air Fleet in the Philippines, convened an extraordinary meeting with his staff officers at Mabalacat Airfield. What he proposed would become both a symbol of Japanese desperation and a testament to how thoroughly American industrial power had broken Japanese conventional military capabilities. "Gentlemen," Onishi began, his voice carrying the weight of terrible certainty, "I have reviewed our combat losses from the past 3 days. Of 347 aircraft committed to operations against the American fleet, 289 have been lost. Our remaining aircraft number fewer than 60 operational fighters and bombers combined." He paused, allowing the magnitude of those numbers to register. In 3 days, the 1st Air Fleet had been effectively annihilated. But the American fleet continued operations with barely diminished capacity. "The Americans have lost perhaps 30 aircraft," Onishi continued. "Yet they continue launching strikes with the same intensity as on the first day. How is this possible? Because they possess more aircraft than we can destroy faster than we can destroy them. Every carrier we damage is replaced. Every plane we shoot down is replaced. Every pilot we kill is replaced. We are fighting an enemy whose capacity to absorb losses exceeds our capacity to inflict them." Lieutenant Commander Nakajima Tadashi, one of the 1st Air Fleet's most experienced pilots, spoke carefully. "Sir, are you suggesting we cannot win through conventional tactics?" "I am stating that conventional tactics have become irrelevant," Onishi replied bluntly. "When the enemy possesses 10 times our numbers and can replace losses at rates we cannot match, skill and courage become insufficient. We need tactics that do not require returning pilots, that do not require maintained aircraft, that maximize damage per sortie regardless of survival." The room fell silent as officers grasped the implication. Onishi was proposing organized suicide attacks, transforming pilots into guided missiles, aircraft into manned bombs. What would become known as the kamikaze strategy was born not from fanatical devotion, but from cold calculation of impossible mathematics. In Tokyo, Admiral Toyota received Vice Admiral Onishi's formal proposal at 1,600 hours. The document was remarkable for its clinical analysis of Japan's situation. American carrier task forces now operate with such numerical superiority that conventional attacks cannot achieve decisive results. A standard torpedo squadron of 9 aircraft, if all reach the target, might damage 1 vessel. The same 9 aircraft, employed as special attack units, could potentially sink or severely damage multiple ships. Given that pilot survival rates in conventional attacks have fallen below 15%, the sacrifice of return capability in exchange for increased effectiveness becomes strategically rational. Toyota read the proposal 3 times. The logic was unassailable, and that was what made it so horrifying. Japanese naval aviation had been reduced to calculations where pilot death was simply another variable in combat effectiveness equations. That at 1,900 hours, Toyota met privately with Rear Admiral Takagi. "Tell me honestly," Toyota asked, "is Onishi correct? Have we truly reached the point where this is our only effective option?" Takagi's response was measured but devastating. "Admiral, the Americans currently operate approximately 90 carriers of various classes in the Pacific. They possess more than 10,000 combat aircraft assigned to naval aviation alone. We have 4 operational carriers, fewer than 200 carrier-qualified pilots remaining, and aircraft production that cannot replace combat losses." He spread intelligence summaries across the desk. "Furthermore, American air defenses have evolved. Their carrier task forces now operate with coordinated radar picket destroyers that provide early warning. They maintain continuous combat air patrol with dozens of fighters. Their anti-aircraft fire control has improved dramatically. A conventional attack formation now requires penetrating multiple defensive layers, each capable of destroying significant portions of the attacking force before reaching the target. And special attack units. Toyota asked quietly. A single aircraft, diving at high speed, is difficult to stop. Even if defensive fire damages the aircraft, momentum can carry it to the target. The mathematics favor the attacker in ways that conventional tactics no longer do. It is, Admiral, the rational response to overwhelming material disadvantage. The formal authorization for organized special attack operations was issued on October 28, 1944. The order's preamble, drafted by Admiral Toyota himself, was brutally honest about the circumstances that made such measures necessary. The enemy's material superiority has reached levels that negate the effectiveness of conventional tactics. Standard attack methods result in unacceptable losses without proportional damage to enemy forces. Special attack operations represent a tactical adaptation to numerical realities we cannot otherwise overcome. On October 29, 1944, the first official kamikaze units launched from Philippine airfields. 24 pilots took off knowing they would not return. 13 reached American carrier formations. 5 struck vessels, sinking the escort carrier St. Lo and damaging 3 others. The tactical exchange ratio seemed to favor the Japanese. 5 ships hit for 24 aircraft lost versus conventional attacks that might expend 50 aircraft to damage 1 ship. But this calculation ignored the fundamental reality. Japan was trading irreplaceable trained pilots for damage to a fleet that America could repair and replace within months at Mabalacat airfield. Flight Operations Officer Lieutenant Yunokawa Fumihiro watched the kamikaze pilots depart and recorded in his diary, "We send these men to die because we cannot afford to send them to fight and return. The Americans have forced us to this by making survival itself a luxury we cannot sustain. This is what defeat looks like, not the moment of surrender, but the moment when your only viable tactic is to stop trying to survive." In Washington, D.C., American naval intelligence officers analyzed reports of the new Japanese tactics with a mixture of horror and grim recognition. One intelligence summary stated, "Enemy employment of suicide attacks represents not fanaticism, but rational adaptation to resource constraints we have imposed. They have calculated that we can absorb their conventional attacks indefinitely. This new approach suggests they understand they are losing and are attempting to maximize casualties before inevitable defeat." The kamikaze strategy would sink or damage hundreds of American vessels over the following months, but it would not change the war's outcome. For every ship damaged, American shipyards launched replacements. For every casualty inflicted, American training programs graduated new sailors and pilots. Japanese commanders had discovered the cruelest truth of industrial warfare. Even suicide, employed systematically as a military tactic, could not overcome an enemy whose production capacity exceeded your entire national economy. November 15, 1944. The Japanese Naval General Staff compiled what would become known internally as the Assessment of Material Reality, a classified document that represented the Imperial Japanese Navy's final, honest evaluation of their strategic position. Rear Admiral Takagi, who authored the primary analysis, began the document with a statement that would have been considered defeatist treason just months earlier. The Imperial Japanese Navy has been defeated not primarily through tactical failures or insufficient warrior spirit, but through fundamental miscalculation of enemy industrial capacity and our inability to wage sustained industrial warfare against an opponent possessing overwhelming material advantages. The document systematically dismantled every strategic assumption that had guided Japanese naval planning since 1941. Each section was supported by exhaustive data that painted an undeniable picture of comprehensive defeat. Section 1 addressed carrier aviation. As of November 1944, the United States Navy operates approximately 90 carriers of all classes. The Imperial Japanese Navy possesses 4 operational carriers, two of which lack sufficient aircraft and trained pilots for combat operations. American monthly carrier aircraft production exceeds 3,000 units. Japanese production approximates 400 units monthly, with declining quality due to material shortages and loss of experienced factory workers to military service. Section 2. Analyzed pilot training. American pilot training programs graduate approximately 2,000 qualified naval aviators monthly from facilities operating across the continental United States. Flight training hours average 600 hours before combat assignment. Japanese pilot training has been reduced to 200 hours or less due to fuel shortages and loss of experienced instructors. We are producing pilots with insufficient skills to survive against experienced American aviators, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of declining effectiveness. Section 3 examined shipbuilding capacity with brutal honesty. During 1944, American shipyards commissioned 9 fleet carriers, 22 escort carriers for battleships, 7 heavy cruisers, 13 light cruisers, and more than 200 destroyers and destroyer escorts. Japanese shipyards commissioned 0 carriers, 0 battleships, 2 light cruisers, and 47 smaller vessels. Furthermore, American construction rates are accelerating while Japanese rates decline due to material shortages, labor shortages, and bombing of industrial facilities. Admiral Toyota convened a final conference on November 20, 1944, with the Navy General Staff and representatives from the Supreme War Council. What he revealed left even the most optimistic officers shaken. "Gentlemen, we must confront facts without illusion," Toyota began, displaying a chart showing comparative naval strength. On December 7, 1941, when we struck Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Navy possessed approximate numerical parity with American Pacific forces. We held qualitative advantages in night combat, torpedo warfare, and carrier aviation. We believe these advantages, combined with fighting spirit and tactical excellence, would enable us to achieve decisive victories before American industrial mobilization could negate our position. He paused, allowing the past tense to register. 3 years later, the Americans operate more ships in the Pacific than we possessed at the war's beginning. They have not merely replaced their losses, they have built entirely new fleets while simultaneously repairing damaged vessels. Most critically, the qualitative advantages we possessed have been systematically eliminated through American technical development and training programs. Lieutenant General Yoshijiro Yamizu, representing the Army General Staff, interrupted. "Surely our ground forces, our fortified positions throughout the Pacific, will be systematically reduced through overwhelming firepower," Toyota stated flatly. "The Americans are not constrained by ammunition shortages. Their battleships can fire thousands of shells in preparation for amphibious assaults. Their carrier aircraft can maintain continuous air support. They possess unlimited logistics capability, fuel, ammunition, spare parts, medical supplies, all delivered by merchant fleets that exceed our entire Navy in tonnage." He displayed reconnaissance photographs of American forward bases at Ulithi Atoll and Manus Island. The images showed anchorages crowded with hundreds of vessels, fleet carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, transports, supply ships, repair vessels, hospital ships. Entire fleets assembled in locations that hadn't existed as military bases 2 years earlier. "These forward bases demonstrate American logistical capabilities we cannot match," Toyota continued. "They have constructed complete naval infrastructure, fuel storage, ammunition dumps, repair facilities, airfields, in locations that were empty atolls months earlier. They can sustain offensive operations indefinitely from these bases, while our forces struggle with supply shortages even in home waters." The implications were inescapable. Captain Oy presented updated intelligence estimates. American merchant ship construction in 1944 will exceed 1,100 vessels totaling more than 10 million tons. Our submarine force has sunk approximately 200 American merchants this year, representing less than 2% of their construction rate. We cannot sink ships faster than they build them. We cannot destroy supplies faster than they produce them. We cannot inflict casualties faster than they replace them. In the silence that followed, Admiral Toyota spoke the conclusion that everyone present understood, but few had been willing to articulate. "Gentlemen, We are not losing this war through insufficient courage or inadequate tactics. We are losing because we challenged an industrial power whose capacity exceeds our own by orders of magnitude we failed to comprehend. Every battle we fight, every ship we lose, every pilot killed, these losses are irreplaceable. American losses are replaced within weeks or months. He gestured to the documents and charts covering the conference table. This is what modern industrial warfare means. Victory belongs not to the bravest warriors or the most skilled commanders, but to the nation capable of producing more ships, more planes, more tanks, more ammunition, more of everything, faster than the enemy can destroy them. We are fighting an enemy whose industrial output exceeds our total economy. Mathematics, not courage, determines the outcome. The conference adjourned with a recommendation that would reach Emperor Hirohito within days. The Imperial Japanese Navy could no longer meaningfully contest American naval supremacy in the Pacific. What had begun at Pearl Harbor with Japanese carriers striking American battleships would end with American industrial might having built a fleet so vast that Japanese forces could only delay, not prevent, the inevitable advance toward the home islands. On November 25, 1944, Admiral Takagi wrote in his private journal, "We saw the American fleet and finally understood what we had awakened. Not simply ships and planes, but an industrial civilization that treats warfare as a production problem to be solved with assembly lines and logistics networks. Against such an enemy, warrior spirit becomes meaningless. The war was lost before it began. We simply did not know it until we saw what America could build when fully committed to our destruction." The document that Japanese generals and admirals had compiled would remain classified for decades. But its conclusions were already manifesting in the endless streams of American ships approaching Japanese-held islands, in the carrier aircraft that darkened Pacific skies, and in the mathematical certainty that no amount of Japanese courage could overcome American industrial supremacy. They had seen the American Pacific Fleet, and in seeing it, they had finally understood the magnitude of their miscalculation.